So as I said, thank you and welcome to the first virtual meeting of the Council. I'm going to pan round so that all members can see the mace of office so that all decision making is appropriate.
Down a little bit, Madam Mayor.
Yeah,
I think we can see that.
got it. Right. Let's just put this up. Members, please be reminded that your microphones will be muted when you are not speaking. When you make a speech, the clerk will let you know when you have 1 minute left, and again when your time is up. Your microphone will then be muted again, so please keep to time. As this is the first meeting with all our members, we will not be able to see your hands raised. Therefore, if you wish to speak and your name is not on my list of speakers, please alert the clerk or the chief executive via the chat function. We are managing a large number of members in this Zoom meeting, so please be patient. Please also note that votes on motions and amendments will be taken via roll call. The monitoring officer will read out the names and I will invite the clerk to read out the total number of votes. If you experience any technical difficulties, please alert a member of the Democratic Services team via the chat function. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Christie?
No, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Simpson?
Madam Mayor, it's
Yes.
Councillor Ormrod.
All right,
Okay.
Councillor Ormrod?
James Holmes is having some difficulties getting on, so he will be joining us very shortly.
Councillor McGrath?
No, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Southgate?
It's on now.
No apologies.
Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No declarations, thank you. The next item to approve the minutes of the council meeting held on the 4th of March 2020. Are there any dissenters to the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of March 2020? As there is no dissent, I shall take that as agreed. Well, it's been an extraordinary end to my mayoral year. And as we haven't been able to hold functions, the ball in particular, I will be holding an online auction for items that would have been auctioned at the ball. So watch your email next week, hopefully, where we'll launch an online auction for some very nice things for you to bid for. Does the leader have any announcements to make?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for coordinating this and chairing this virtual meeting. I do have one announcement to make with regret. Councillor Tobin Byers has decided to step down from the Cabinet for personal reasons. I shall look into the vacancy in the next few days. If you permit me, Madam Mayor, I just wish to say a few words of thanks to Councillor Byers, one of the most hardworking, talented in my Cabinet, brought a talent for depth and detail to our proceedings, vastly improved our adult social care services with extra investment in that service, when you took over as chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, that board was not functioning as well as it should have been. But to this day and today, it is the admiration of directors of health and wellbeing boards throughout London. I wish to thank him for that huge improvement. His work on diabetes in this borough, the scourge of diabetes, was recognised by the local government chronicle and elicited funding from the clinical commissioning group, so that our work on that illness carries on. Together, we mounted a campaign to keep all the services at St Helier Hospital, to have any preferred emergency hospital at St Helier Hospital. And sadly, his arguments and my arguments were denied by the NHS bureaucrats. Tobin, you took on a huge brief. Sometimes I wonder whether you could have taken some more, because you just lapped it all up. And I want to thank you for the way in which you have worked with Veolia, talked them through their contract, and now that organisation is providing a service that is meeting the expectations of our residents in every road. Still a long way to go, but you vastly improved that service. You have a knack for cross-party work, and you brought on organisations following the climate emergency motion. You worked with all organisations, and you have a yearning to make sure that we are carbon neutral, and that climate change is tackled not only in London, in Merton, but internationally as well. You will be missed by all of us within Cabinet. I know the residents will miss you, because you have a way of working with them. You had a way of working with them as well as a Cabinet member. I know we've exchanged letters, and I know that you have said that you will continue to support the administration as a councillor on the backbenches, and I'm eternally grateful. Thank you very much, Tobin.
The Chief Executive does not have any announcements, so I shall move on to item 5. The motion to suspend Council Procedure Rule 2.3 to vary the order of business as set out in the agenda. I understand this is being formally proposed by Councillor Alan Brittis.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I formally propose. This is all part of what we're about tonight, and we need to pass.
And this has been formally seconded by Councillor Allison.
Sorry, technology. That's right, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Does any member wish to dissent, or is that agreed?
No dissent is agreed.
Thank you, that is agreed. The next item is the public questions. These have been published along with the responses from Cabinet members. Can I ask that members note the questions and answers contained within the agenda pack? Thank you, that is noted. We will now move to item 6, Councillors' questions to Cabinet members. These have been published along with the responses from Cabinet members. I will read out each member's name in the order they appear in the agenda and invite you to ask a supplementary question. Please ensure all supplementary questions are brief and not a statement, and we will get through as many as possible in 15 minutes. Firstly, Councillor Dehaney.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. I have a supplementary for the Cabinet member. Can I ask the Cabinet member if, following the government's announcement for further funding for councils they are now providing, and they are going to cover the full cost of the epidemic for the council? And if so, will the council be able to use any surplus from the government to support local businesses? Hello?
Oh, Councillor Allison?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to thank him for his follow-up. I've tried throughout the epidemic to be positive about the government because this is an unprecedented pandemic, and any government would have struggled to respond. I think in good faith, many of them are doing their best to prevent the spread and reduce the economic impact. I do understand, obviously, that some commentators have been concerned that it's the government's lockdown so late and that many people have struggled as a result. However, to be fair, they have recognised there would be high costs and did promise to provide us with whatever it takes. If this was the case, we would be very happy to use the extra funding to help local businesses as well as charities. We've been praised by the government for the speed and business-like way we've given so much support to our business sector, and more than 95% of the funding available has already been handed over. But in answer to his question, no, I'm afraid that the latest announcement from the government still falls a long way short of what they promised, probably by more than £20 million, or around double our entire unallocated reserves. They've also made it very clear in their guidance that many of the businesses we'd like to support cannot be helped using the government's money as they're too big or in the wrong sector. And so I want to use this opportunity to ask all councillors to work together to persuade the government to deliver what they promised and ensure the council and our businesses receive whatever it takes to get through this awful coronavirus outbreak.
Councillor Ormerod?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last week, the government announced the lifting of restrictions on all school children returning to class in September. In light of the new guidance, what steps has the Cabinet member taken to prepare for a full reopening in September? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Councillor Ormerod for her question and for her support for Merton children over the past few months. Indeed, the government is expecting all children to come back in September, and the guidance that was released towards the end of last week was quite long and quite comprehensive, but also quite flexible. And so we're currently supporting schools to understand how it works, how it applies in their situation, because all schools are not identical, to help them work out the best way that all pupils can go back in a way which allows them to continue with their education and to continue to receive a broad and balanced curriculum, but also keeps them and their staff safe. So this includes regular weekly meetings with secondary heads, with representatives from primary heads, with individual primary schools getting regular calls from their Merton education partner, and with daily updates from the team about how to interpret the guidance, and making sure also that the schools are working together, because sometimes the decision one school makes will have an effect on other schools, and we need to make sure that it works as a community. Thank you.
Councillor Draper?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet member for making it clear that it was the government's and not the London Mayor's decision to deny free travel on TfL services for the under-16s and for Freedom Pass holders without entering into any consultation. What does he see as likely to be the longer-term impact in Merton on how easy it will be to travel around the borough, particularly for disadvantaged and for young residents, particularly for those in the east of the borough?
I'd like to thank Councillor Draper for his supplementary. I believe that this is a completely retrograde step that the government have taken. Many hard-working families will suffer potentially as a result of additional costs by having to pay for the fares for the children to go to school. It also as well concerns me that it will potentially fall upon the local authority to pay for travel passes, as it is a statutory responsibility. We have been saved by TfL having that responsibility since 2004, but I fear that there will be long-term consequences of this, and it's yet another cost and another burden that government have placed upon hard-working families in Merton. I would ask that government reconsider this change, as I believe that it is wrong, and free travel for under 18s is something that I welcome as cabinet member and should be kept, and I will fight to keep it along with fellow London Council leads. Thank you.
Councillor McLean.
He's not unmuted yet. Try again.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for his response and for highlighting the government-funded council tax hardship fund. We also welcome the discretion shown to increase the payment to £200. It is, of course, a shame that similar courage had not been shown when it comes to supporting Merton business. Councillor Allison, can you explain why you chose to apply such a narrow interpretation of government business grant funding guidelines, and doing so failing to demonstrate political leadership?
Councillor Allison to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank him. Also, I'd like to thank the councillor for his follow-up. I'm very sorry that this appears to be becoming a partisan debate. As I said earlier, I've tried throughout the epidemic to be fair to the government when others have criticised the way they locked down and the economic damage this has caused the country, let alone the excess deaths. And to be fair, the government has provided an unprecedented package of financial support for the country, and that is laudable. However, as I said earlier, it is still not whatever it takes. They have given some funding, but they have specifically forbidden us in the eligibility criteria from helping a number of Merton's businesses using the funds that they have provided. And this is very frustrating for us. We've done an astonishing job getting money to businesses, and I'd like to thank him for praising us for the work we've done to get money to our residents. Ministers have singled us out for praise in the House of Commons for our work. But I repeat what I said earlier, the government has still fallen a long way short of giving Merton what they promised by tens of millions of pounds, and they have fallen a long way short of giving our local businesses what they deserve, or allowing us to provide the money that they so much need.
Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for your reply. The disproportionate effect of COVID-19 on BAME communities highlights a whole range of structural inequalities that exist within our society. Can the Cabinet Member please tell us how she will use her role to address these and help improve outcomes for BAME people?
Councillor Atwar, would you like to respond?
Yes, we've already started the piece of work on this very subject, and have engaged with BAME Voice to engage with the community to establish the lived experiences of the community, and that will inform the work that we will take forward from this.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd like to first thank Councillor Welton and everyone else involved for keeping the inevitable delays to both the stadium project and the new school to an absolute minimum. Does he agree with me that as we come out of this crisis and the recovery from it, that planning, building and regeneration are going to play a large part in the recovery of Merton?
Thank you, Councillor Ward, for your supplementary. Can I also thank you for the work that you do on the planning committee? In terms of the recovery, I think regeneration and housing will be absolutely key to that. We need to build a lot more homes in this borough, that is clear, but there also has to be more affordable homes and generally affordable homes. At that, we have over 10,000 people on the waiting list, and we still have a major housing crisis, both here in Merton and in London as a whole. So building has to be part of that recovery. And there should also, as well, in my view, be more money for social homes for rent. And I don't welcome the change government made in terms of funding last week. Yes, we do need to build more homes. And yes, we do need to deliver going forward. There's many opportunities in terms of regeneration sites in the borough, and I hope to see the planning committee approve many of them over the next year. Thank you.
Councillor Gretton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I asked the Cabinet Member for Finance what the total of the government support was for the council and local businesses, but he wasn't able to add them up. But obviously we have seen in the council papers tonight references to things like £11 million of cash and £29 million going to small businesses in our borough and £46 million going in the business rate support as well. These are very large sums, totaling up, as you see in the papers, to around £100 million. On that basis, Madam Mayor, will the Cabinet Member for Finance perhaps kindly acknowledge that his description of that level of government support as little by little for the previous Cabinet meeting was perhaps not the best choice of words to describe that strong level of support?
Councillor Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and again, I'd like to thank him for his response. I can only say that what I've said earlier, that I'm sorry that people want to be partisan here, and I'm sorry if my words have been taken in a context like that. I have really striven throughout all of this to avoid being partisan, and to be fair to the government, this is obviously not an easy thing. It's not been easy for them, it's not been easy for us. And the sums of money that have been provided have been unprecedented. However, as I've explained earlier, they are still a long way from being enough. They are a long way from whatever it takes, which is what they promised. And so, I mean, I can only try and repeat what I said earlier, because we know that 15,000, more than 15,000 of our residents in Richmond Morden have been furloughed, and more than 10,000 in Wimbledon. There are going to be great struggles ahead. And so, you know, the government has fallen a long way short of giving them what they promised. And I do think they need to come forward with further money for our businesses. We've taken a business-like approach, and we certainly ask the government to do the same. But frankly, we are on the verge of going bust. And so we have no means of providing extra support unless the government can help us. And I really do ask everybody here, including Councillor Gretton and Councillor McLean, to use their influence that they have over the government through their friend Stephen Hammond MP to persuade the government to give us the help they promised and to help save local businesses that might close if they do not act.
The next question will be the final question as we're out of time. Councillor Southgate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Cabinet Member for his reply. I'm heartened that he is willing to consider some flexibility in the operation of the ward allocation funds. If I can just mention, we submitted a bid that complied with all the criteria, highly prescriptive criteria, on the 21st of November last year. Perhaps my suspicion should have been aroused by the fact that no fewer than 6 officers were named in the response to that as responsible. But since then, really, there has been absolutely no inclination on the part of any of them to get on and get these projects done. I do feel that, putting it simply, officers do not seem to see it as part of their day job. So my question, twofold: can we have a clear line of accountability to one officer responsible for getting these projects carried out? And can he also perhaps consider other shovel-ready projects that meet the criteria in addition to those presently set out in the ward allocation funding list? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southgate, for your supplementary. If you do send me on the details, I will certainly look on it. Clearly, the ward allocations were introduced last year. We are going through a learning process in terms of their allocation and in terms of their bids. This is something I very much welcome in terms of wards having the ability to spend projects in their own local areas. We will certainly look, obviously, at suggestions you come forward, and I will certainly follow up further on the points that you have raised tonight, Councillor Southgate.
We are now going to deal with the main report on the Council's response to COVID-19. I'm going to invite the Leader of the Council to present and then seek a seconder. I will then invite the Conservative and Liberal Democrat group leaders to respond to the report. I will then ask for the amendments received to be formally moved and seconded. Then I will invite the members to speak who have previously indicated that they wish to do so. Then I will invite the Leader of the Council to reply to the debate and the amendments. We will then vote on the amendments received via roll call. Finally, we will vote on the substantive motion, amended or not, as the case may be. Councillor Alan Brittis, please present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shall go through the Council's response to COVID-19 in this part of my speech, and in my second speech later, as you referred to, I shall give my thanks to everyone involved, including my thoughts on the amendments. Madam Mayor, it is with a great deal of sadness that I have to report that there have been 197 deaths in Merton. Our thoughts and prayers go to the families, friends and colleagues of all those who have lost loved ones. As a council, we're looking into the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on our BAME communities. And page 33 of our report refers, Madam Mayor, to the human rights, equalities and community cohesion implications of the pandemic here in Merton, and both Councillors Attawar and Macaulay are working closely with officers, including our BAME councillors. Madam Mayor, we have had an emergency planning arrangement in place since March in the borough. We're working on a regional level in Southwest London on COVID-19. We have contacted 7,019 residents on the shielding programme, a list provided to us by the government, contacted everyone to see if they need support, and support is going to them via the government and through us. We are playing a key role in setting up one of London's first community response hubs in partnership with Merton Voluntary Service Council, Merton Clinical Commissioning Group, and other key voluntary groups from across the borough, which I will thank later in my second speech. With regard to the issue of personal protective equipment, we have a good stock, around 29 days worth. And to date, to this day, we have given out in excess of 1.6 million items of PPE to social care providers, with a further 1.3 million currently being delivered at no cost to those providers. We have joined the Pan-London procurement exercise, one of the biggest exercises in procurement for PPE, and we have, with the other 32 local authorities, including the City of London, procured, and we have access to a part of 50 million items of PPE. Our council staff have been working closely with schools to ensure that vulnerable children are being safeguarded and essential social work home visits are continued. We have left it up to schools, head teachers, governors, support staff on further opening, and that's what they are doing.
1 minute remaining.
Primary schools, as at the 29th of June, are 93%. Secondary schools are welcoming children. Our 3 special schools have planned for wider opening, and we have housed 52 rough sleepers. We've redeployed staff, Madam Mayor. Our council's regulatory services are working to ensure compliance to the new regulations for shops. Bailiffs are not issuing writs, they're turning up with food. Garth Road Recycling Centre reopened on May the 13th. Our libraries are opening imminently. With more people needing to travel safely, we have an emergency transport plan, and Councillor Welton will deal with that. The safety of our residents during lockdown is important, and the partnership we have with the police is crucial, and Councillor Macaulay will speak on that. And on finances, Councillor Allison will speak on that. Madam Mayor, as I finish, with outbreaks in Leicester,
4 minutes, Chair.
Scenes from Soho Square, and abroad with pandemics reasserting itself in New Zealand and in India, this is far from over, and therefore, Madam Mayor, here in Merton, we shall remain ever vigilant for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. This is being seconded by Councillor Allison. Do you wish to speak now, Councillor Allison?
It's muted.
You're muted.
I've just been unmuted, and I'm just going to say I'm not happy to second and to reserve my right to speak until the end. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor McLean, would you like to present your amendment? Oh, speaking to the main report. Sorry, Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and my thanks to the officers for preparing tonight's report. The last few months have been unprecedented in all our lives and have brought challenges that we would never have expected to face. Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic has been unlike any other public health challenge in our lifetime. And Britain has not faced anything similar since Spanish influenza over 100 years ago. Since March, we have witnessed the incredible dedication and sacrifice of all who work in our NHS and care sector. Because of their hard work, their courage and professionalism, many lives across our country have been saved, but sadly, we have lost many too. In Merton, the pain of losing relatives, friends, and loved ones has been a tragic and painful experience for us all. Madam Mayor, in this dark time, we can take pride that as a borough, we have shown the best of our community, work together and for each other. We have shown the great strength and spirit of the people of the London Borough of Merton. And I want to pay a special tribute to those who have made sacrifices to help so many in our community who were and still are in urgent need. The MVSC, Wimbledon Guild, Fish, Merton Matters, the Dons Local Action Group, and countless more who organise help for those who were shielded or facing hardship. And of course, our Merton residents. I also want to pay a special tribute to our council officers who worked so hard for our community, to support our community during this pandemic. Madam Mayor, the way back from the pandemic to normality will not be easy, and indeed it will not be quick. However, as we begin to move out of lockdown, cherish greater personal freedom, and see friends and family who have been absent for too long, we must remember to be responsible in controlling the virus and continue to help all those in the borough who still need our support. Madam Mayor, during this pandemic, we have seen the government go to greater lengths than any other country in protecting jobs and living standards through the furlough scheme. Indeed, in Merton, the furlough scheme has helped to protect over 25,000 jobs. And the government has provided over £34.5 million to support the self-employed in Merton. In addition to committing to provide approximately £100 million in additional funding for this borough. However, Madam Mayor, I think we all realise that time is running out for many businesses that are vital to our local economy. And that is why we have put forward an amendment tonight that calls for an increased financial support for those businesses that have so far missed out on funding. As my colleagues will explain later,
1 minute remaining.
For the council, we are calling on all other parties to match our ambition for Merton and to take this opportunity. Perhaps a last opportunity to protect our local businesses. We hope that colleagues from all parties can support our amendment tonight, and in doing so, help support our local economic recovery. Thank you.
Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, we'd like to give our thanks to all staff across the council, partner agencies and volunteers who've all worked tirelessly to help residents and businesses during these stressful times. We'd also like to thank our residents for playing their full part in doing the right things, and we offer our condolences to those who've lost friends and relatives. There are three themes tonight that we want to talk about the COVID-19 response. Those are retaining the good, keeping those we helped in sight, and raising our ambitions for the future. Now, I'm going to talk briefly about the first, and Councillors Bakari and Kohler will talk about the others. Madam Mayor, if I'm honest, my group had lots of ideas for recommendations tonight, but we're proposing just one amendment. We wanted to give it the best chance we could to pass. At the Budget Council, all those months ago, we talked about precarious living, particularly about fair pay for workers on council contracts, and hopefully our amendment is self-explanatory. Care workers are some of the lowest paid in our community, and as the pandemic has demonstrated, they're performing vital work. So let's do the right thing and let's take steps towards paying them fairly. I'd also like to add some very brief words of thanks to Councillor Byers for working with our group on the wording of this amendment. So I hope we can get agreement across all the parties. Turning to the report more generally, out of this terrible time, there has been some good and many examples of kindness and compassion, and we mustn't lose this. We need to identify what the council did right and embed those ways of working. For example, 3.9 of the report talks about a single point of contact for charities. Now, we support this, and there'll be many other examples that we need to capture and learn those lessons. We also need to find a new way of working as a council. Local government has delivered for people. Collectively, we have to step up and own that responsibility. We must be open and unafraid of other points of view and effective scrutiny. We must work across the parties where we can, and that means sharing ideas and views, as well as actively engaging, formally and informally. I hope we all enjoyed the cleaner air of the past few months. Many of us could breathe easier, animals and plants flourished. We need the many open spaces in our borough for exercise and recreation. Some of us had time to reflect and acknowledge the benefits of working at or closer to home, and we don't want to lose that either, especially given the current difficulties in using public transport and the rush to restart the economy. And whilst remembering all this, we should take time to acknowledge that the many groups and individuals who came together to help and support our local communities. Let's host celebrations, be inclusive, share ideas, but acknowledge the sadness, honour the dead, and look forward to our new future and our roles in it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Fairclough, please formally move your amendment.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to formally move the amendment.
The amendment is being formally seconded by Councillor McGrath.
Seconded.
Conservative amendment. Councillor Gretton, please formally move your amendment.
I formally move the amendment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
The amendment is being formally seconded by Councillor Ormerod.
Formally second it.
I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Council has been working very closely with MVSC to set up a community response hub. The hub takes calls directly from residents in Merton or voluntary sector organizations requesting support across a wide range of needs, i.e. shopping, isolation, dog walking. Martin Volunteers, which now stands at just over 3,000 people, are providing practical support in distribution of food packages to support residents in need and also those who have been shielding and in self-isolation. The volunteers have been fantastic since the start of lockdown. At our Martin Giving Corona virtual steering meeting yesterday, I thank Jenny O'Neill for her and her team for all their hard work and the help which they have given to our local voluntary sector and all those who have benefited from the fund to help vulnerable people in the borough. And our latest snapshot of grant awards indicates that awards made to BME-led organization was close to the borough's benchmark of 38%. The council has also been working very closely with the police from the BCU under the leadership of the borough commander, Sally Benetta, and there has been a joined up response to crime and community safety. Although there has been an increase in some issues over the weekend, the police presence has been very good to ensure the safety of our residents, and the police have been patrolling all the hotspots in both Mitcham and Wimbledon. Although after the lifting of the lockdown last week, the police has been very busy.
1 minute remaining.
There has been a lot of activities and the police are coping very well in terms of local parties and other issues that has arisen as a result of this lockdown. I must state that the police are in full control, and I would like to express my sincere thanks to the borough commander, Sally Benetta, and her team for all their hard work, and all the officers and the enforcement officers. They have been absolutely brilliant in serving our borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bakari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. During the pandemic, many hidden groups and societal problems have been highlighted. I've seen this firsthand as I volunteered for Wimbledon Food Bank, and during these last few months, we have seen the less visible groups, the shielded, the homeless, suffering domestic violence, those struggling with mental health issues, and the structural issues affecting BAME groups. As we start to emerge from lockdown, many of our residents are frightened and worried. We must not lose sight of them and do all we can to continue to protect and support them. So we must make sure our policy making includes the less visible. Paragraph 312 of the report talks about shielded, but it's wider than that. We must not return to the bad old days. With focus, resolve, and remarkable speed, we have housed rough sleepers. We put a roof over their heads, gave them access to food, healthcare, and a way back into society. Paragraph 4.2 states that we're expecting a significant rise in homelessness. The number of Merton households in temporary accommodation is the highest it's been in a decade and is expected to be even higher because of the terrible government decision to no longer have a ban on evictions. Now, this must mean we have to redouble our efforts, take full advantage of central government funding, and we must not let those who have immigration status without public funding and slip through the net. We must help many of the residents who are facing distress of unemployment, financial strife, and as if things weren't bad enough, families are now facing the prospect of TfL removing free transport for our under 18s. This is devastating. So we must continue to work again with our health colleagues who have ensured that new reference for mental health emergencies is retained and strengthened. And as we come out of this period, people will be suffering in different ways. Depression, anxiety will be commonplace, and our children will be struggling too, as their future looks worrying and uncertain. So we must stand up for our key workers who will have worked through fear and worry, often on the front line. Don't forget them. Continue to value their work and their sacrifices. And as we say in our amendment, we must pay them fairly. Finally, we must recognise the long-term health effects on people affected directly by COVID-19. We must not forget them. Sight must not become out of mind. So for all of these groups, they must no longer be hidden groups. Thank you.
Councillor Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to begin by remembering all those across Merton and beyond who lost their lives, their health, or their livelihoods during a year like no other. 2020 also signifies clarity of vision, of course, and that's something that has also emerged over this period. The way COVID-19 impacted the disadvantaged in our society brings shame on us all, as did the shocking murder of George Floyd. What COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter movement have in common is that they have shone an unwavering light on the many inequalities in our society. We're at a turning point, and here in Merton, we must play our part. We should commit, cross-party as a council, to implement Public Health England's local government recommendations and their report into the impact COVID-19 had on BAME communities. The council must keep its promises by implementing rather than burying previous commitments to ensure our recruitment practices are free from bias. Our police must ensure Stop and Search does not unwittingly stigmatise BAME communities. I'd like to thank our Borough Commander, Sally Benatar, for meeting with me last week to discuss this issue. We must commit to a future that is green, from big projects to small initiatives. I'd like to really thank Councillor Byers for his excellent work chairing the non-party political climate emergency working group, and for agreeing to my small suggestion of trialling a new anti-litter campaign in my ward. Merton will really miss his resignation from the Cabinet. We must also win hearts and minds, transforming the built environment. I'd ask the administration to reflect on whether its approach to the first low traffic neighbourhoods will do that, as I fear the process lacks transparency, which fuels suspicion. In education, we need to learn the lessons of the lockdown. All our children must have access to IT and the internet, and Merton schools must have all they need to hit the ground running come September. We must build homes, in particular affordable homes, which is why I was so disappointed by a recent Tory leaflet objecting to the YMCA
1 minute remaining.
proposal to build 121 affordable homes in my ward, in which Mr. Councillor McLean stated that 135 flats are not an acceptable addition to our community. But all of this costs money, of course, so we must rebuild a healthy and vibrant local economy by helping local businesses brought to their knees by the lockdown. That's why the council's failure to help Merton's language schools, hospitality companies, market research and medical businesses is so incomprehensible. Jessica Gray, the events director of Oxygen, has now provided councillors with a list of some 40 councillors who have given grants and or business rate relief to such companies. My question is simple. If they can do it, why can't we? Our local small businesses are critical to our economy, and for these reasons we will vote for the Tory amendment, even though it has been drafted in the hope we'll vote against it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gretton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The theme tonight is certainly doing what the council can and to help local businesses and help our local economy. And I think it's right to refer to Rishi Sunak's announcement, his plan for jobs announcement today, which announced a £2 billion plan to create new jobs for 16 to 24-year-olds, new apprentice schemes for adults who are 25 or over, hundreds of £1 million coming into our job centres and career services for coaching and very positive initiatives like that, and even £3 billion for greener homes and greener schools to develop that low carbon community. Madam Mayor, we've heard quite a lot this evening that of the very high levels of funding from central government already to council and to our local business in the tune of approximately £100 million and growing. But it's not just, Madam Mayor, it's not just the £75 million which is being provided to support our local pubs and restaurants and shops in Wimbledon and Mitcham and Morden. It's not just the £11 million of extra cash that the government has given already to help the cash balance of Merton Council. It's not just the many millions of pounds which Robert Jenrick has just announced as well for the new scheme from government, which will help towards the council's losses that it may incur. It's also, Madam Mayor, the £11 million of surplus underspend, Madam Mayor, from the financial year 2018 to 2019. And of course, we just see numbers for the after the books closed for the financial year 19 to 20, when there was another surplus or underspend, Madam Mayor, something in the region of £6 million, plus extra money to come from the business rates pool once that's fully audited. And that's all leading at that
1 minute remaining,
Madam Mayor, to millions of pounds being put away in all the various reserves, Madam Mayor, of the council. This is a time, Madam Mayor, for the leaders of the council to find some courage and find ambition, and for once, and look at setting up a new fund to help our local businesses, to help those music production companies, catering companies, language schools, Madam Mayor, events companies, all those very good local businesses who need that extra support at this crucial time. This is not the time for Councillor Alan Brittis or Councillor Allison to turn their backs on local businesses. It's a time for them to support them. And therefore, I urge that all councillors of all parties now support this amendment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ormerod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. The last few months has had a considerable impact on school children of all ages, teachers and heads, everybody across the board. I'd therefore like to begin this speech with a huge thank you to everybody for adapting their styles to do their utmost for our school children to ensure continuation in their education. Personally, today has been an incredibly emotional day for myself and my family. Today marked the final day of our daughter's school year, with virtual prize giving to mark the end of her years in primary school. We've embraced Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and so many other virtual environments to remain connected, continue learning, and keep in contact with friends. These have certainly been unprecedented times and difficult for everybody around the world, while we adjust to new ways of life and learning. I've had calls with Rachel and Eleanor throughout the period of lockdown, so we could work together to try to see what is needed and consistently offered my help to them in any way that I could. I'm pleased that the Department for Education made arrangements for the supply of what I believe to be around about 500 laptops to children in Year 10 and social care for our borough, and understand that council officers have ensured that those pupils who most needed them have got them. We'll probably have to go back to Eleanor for the exact number. There is no denying that some children will have missed out on their normal education, and invite the Cabinet member to explain how she expects the catch-up fund, for which the government has set out £1 billion nationally, to go to those children most in need to be able to catch up by September. Now, in terms of the report, in terms of where I was surprised that within the challenges ahead section of the report, it doesn't mention the delayed opening of the Harris Academy Wimbledon to at least half term in the autumn. And I know that came up in questioning, but I don't feel that it actually fully answered the question in terms of what will happen with all pupils within the councillor questions section at the start of the call. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Welton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the last Cabinet meeting, Merton Council passed the emergency transport response to the coronavirus pandemic and to aid social distancing in the borough. The plan is focused on making changes to roads and pavements in the borough to improve road safety, support social distancing, and provide more space for walking and cycling. We have seen a 10-fold increase in cycling and a 5-fold increase in walking through the pandemic. Merton is fortunate to have good public transport accessibility, but with London's public transport capacity potentially running at a fifth of pre-COVID-19 levels, thousands of journeys will need to be made by other means. If Merton's residents switch only a fraction of these journeys to cars, our borough risks grinding to a halt, air quality will worsen, and road danger will increase. Without improvements to infrastructure, our residents will be less confident to switch to sustainable transport modes, such as walking and cycling. To respond to this situation, Merton Council will look to reuse road space to serve this unprecedented demand for walking and cycling, in a major strategic shift to meet our long-term sustainability and active travel goals. Already you may have seen widened pavements and temporary cycling lanes in Mitcham and Wimbledon. We're also looking at longer-term work to improve walking and cycling routes throughout the borough. As part of the agreed plans, we are looking at introducing 10 low-traffic neighbourhoods, and these will be further defined through consultation and by the level of funding granted by Transport for London. To date, we have received 280,000 from TfL and Department of Transport, and we hope later this week to get further funding for the strategic cycling network. As these are emergency measures and temporary, we need to move fast to have them implemented by October. Any full and permanent consultations would require full consultation. We also heard the great news that we received £85,000 of funding for 18 school streets in the borough, which will be implemented for their full return in September. This is where traffic outside schools is restricted at the start and end of the school day and is to improve the air quality and reduce emissions. In Merton, we already have 4 in place at Link, St Thomas's, Harris Primary and Singlegate, and we hope to see many more coming in the months ahead. We're also looking at potentially even more school streets in the borough and up to a grand total of 32. There are many exciting schemes we can do in the borough with our funding of 280,000, and we can achieve even more if we receive the necessary funding to enable us to do that. We're in unprecedented times. We need to take advantage of these times to make a step change in behaviour across the borough. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to pay tribute to Merton staff for the way they worked so hard to sacrifice and keep the show on the road. You and Merton Council have done so much to help our community, distributing help and money to local businesses and charities and continuing to deliver amazing social care to our residents. I'd also like to thank our voluntary sector for stepping up to the plate and for and our staff for helping them to do so. Throughout the pandemic, I have volunteered with my wife at the food bank in Pollard's Hill, helping people across Mitcham and beyond with the very basics, delivering foods to people with no money, some of whom can't get out of the house. It's been a sobering experience and it's probably changed many of us. As well as great fear about how coronavirus affects people's health, there has been terror about how it is hitting them in their pockets. Families who have been stuck in overcrowded garages or shared houses have lost their jobs, have got into debt and have struggled to afford to eat. So I'd like to thank everyone who has volunteered to help out our most deprived residents. You've done Merton proud. Many of the people struggling financially, though, have been care workers. We have stood and clapped them on Thursday nights, but now face difficulties. My father-in-law is a resident in a local care home, and although he's now in St George's, the care he's received has been second to none. I'm therefore second to none. I'm therefore happy to support calls for the government to ensure our care workers receive at least the living wage, something that we cannot afford to pay now following a decade of austerity. We will therefore accept the Liberal Democrat amendment. There are many good causes we would like to support. However, as I said in answer to earlier questions, we can only do so if the government gives us whatever it takes. They have praised us for the speed and business-like way we have given so much money to our business sector. But the cost of the council of tackling coronavirus has been crippling, tens of millions of pounds, many times our available reserves. And without more help, we will be in trouble. The government have also made it clear in their guidance that we cannot use their money to support some businesses we would really like to help. If one thing comes out of tonight, I hope it is a shared determination to persuade the government to step in and help those fantastic Merton firms named by councillors tonight and those not. But because we have no money ourselves and have not been paid in full by the government, we cannot vote for the Conservative amendment, even though we wish we could. The residents of Merton don't want to see a political slamming match.
1 minute remaining.
Too many of our friends and family have died. Too many have lost jobs or need financial support. I'm sure there are many who feel the government could have done better, particularly at the outset of the pandemic, to stop things getting this bad. And I'm sure there will be others who feel we could have done things differently too. But it was never going to be easy, and we have all done our best, government, council, everybody. Now, I don't personally like virtual meetings, but I think it's been good to come together now, at least on Zoom. And I hope that we can join together in acknowledging all that the council has done since March, and together in calling for the government to give us whatever it takes as soon as they can. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
If there are no further speakers, Councillor Alan Brittis, do you wish to use your right of reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to use my right of reply to thank a number of people and organisations. I want to thank MVSC, Age UK Merton, Wimbledon Guild, Merton Mutual Aid based in Wimbledon, Don's Local Action Group linked to AFC Wimbledon, Friends in St Helier, Merton and Morden Guild. As my deputy has said, the New Horizons Centre, Pollard's Hill, Commonside in Mitcham, our great food banks, Old Rut Centre, Wimbledonians. I know the All England Tennis Croquet Club has also helped. Merton Chamber of Commerce, Love Wimbledon. I wanted on behalf of all the councillors to thank our staff for their efforts, our Director of Public Health, Dagmar Zuna, and all our public health staff, and Councillor Byers for the way they work together to protect at all times our residents. Our Director of Children, Schools and Families, Rachel Wardell, and
1 minute remaining.
And Councillor Stringer for their support of our schools, with thanks to teachers, all school staff, governors, parents and children. Thanks also to Rachel, to Everett Willis and to Councillor Attawar for their ongoing work on equalities. Our Director of Adult Social Care, Hannah Doody, on her work with John Morgan in our care homes with Councillor Byers. Our Director of Finance, Caroline Holland, Head of Revenue Services, David Kepler and their staff, and Councillor Allison for their help. Our Director of Environmental Services, Chris Lee, Future Merton, along with Councillor Welton and Councillor Macaulay on safety issues. Our Head of Parks, Doug Napier, Councillor Cooper Marbert for keeping us safe in our parks. Can I also take the time to thank our MPs, Siobhan McDonough for her work on free school meals, mobile phones, iPads, access to the internet for our children, and of course to Stephen Hammond, MP, for his unwavering representation of the local business community in Wimbledon. Finally, Madam Mayor, thanks for our CEO, Jed Curran, for coordinating our response to COVID-19, and to you, Madam Mayor, for all your work in a difficult year for you as the first citizen of our borough. Can I thank every councillor, and I mean every councillor, for their engagement with our community during this difficult time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I would now call for a roll call on the First Amendment, but I think I picked up that there's broad agreement. So unless I get a dissent, can we take the First Amendment, the Liberal Democrat amendment, as agreed? Yes. Thank you. I will now call for a vote on the Second Amendment.
Good evening, councillors. I'm now going to make a...
if you switch your microphone off and we
I
just
had,
see.
I've just unmuted.
Just mute yourself and then Councillors, I'll start again. And we've got two different microphones going, so it's causing some feedback. So apologies for that. Can you hear me? Councillors, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can. Yes. Apologies for that. I was sitting with Madam Mayor and our microphones were clashing with each other. I'm going to call the amendment sitting in the names of Councillor Gretton and Ormerod. And when I do, could you please indicate clearly whether or not you're voting for, against or not voting? Councillor Akagina.
Against.
For or against, Councillor Akagina, the amendment standing in the names of Councillor Gretton and Ormerod.
Against. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
I've got, yeah, I can hear you now. Thank you. Councillor Alan Brittas.
Against.
Councillor Allison.
Against.
Councillor Anderson. Councillor Anderson. I'll come back to those people I don't count at the end of the roll call. Councillor Attawar.
Yeah, against.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Barlow.
For.
Councillor Bembo.
For.
Councillor Bakari.
For.
Councillor Braund.
Against.
Councillor Brunt.
Against.
Councillor Adam Bush.
For.
Councillor Omar Bush.
For.
Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Byers.
Against.
Councillor Christie.
Against.
Councillor Chung. Councillor Chung. I'll come back to that. Councillor Cooper Mobia.
Against.
Councillor Cowper. Councillor Cowper.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe. Councillor Crowe. Councillor Curtin. Councillor Curtin.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Dehaney.
Against.
Councillor Draper.
Against.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Fraser.
Against.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Gretton.
For.
Councillor Henry.
Against.
Councillor Holden.
For.
Councillor Holmes. May still. May not have made it in yet. Councillor Andrew Howard.
For.
Councillor Irons.
Councillor Kenny,
Against.
Councillor Kirby,
Against.
Councillor Kohler,
For.
Councillor Lanning,
Against.
Councillor Latif,
For.
Councillor Macaulay,
Against.
Councillor Makin, Councillor Makin, Councillor McCabe,
Against.
Councillor McGrath,
For.
Councillor McLean,
For.
Councillor Moulton,
For.
Councillor Mundy,
Against.
Councillor Ormrod,
For.
Councillor Pearce,
Against.
Councillor Pritchard,
Against.
Councillor Quilliam,
Against.
Councillor Simpson, Councillor Simpson. You're muted, Councillor Simpson. I think I can see you waving. Or Councillor Skeet,
Against.
Councillor Southgate,
For.
Councillor Stamford, Against, Councillor Stringer,
Against.
Councillor Ward,
Against.
Councillor Welton,
Against.
Councillor Wilkinson,
For.
Councillor Williams,
For.
Councillor Foley, the Deputy Mayor,
For.
Councillor Howard, the Mayor.
I'm not voting.
I will just come back to the names I didn't quite catch to give you another chance to express your vote. Councillor Anderson, Councillor Chung, against, yeah. Councillor Crowe,
For. For.
thank you. Councillor Holmes and Councillor Makin. Thank you. I've got that now. Thank you, councillors.
We're just waiting for the results to be calculated, and then the clerk will read out the result.
Against. 1, 2, 3, must be. 33 against.
It's 24 for, 33 against, it's lost.
24 for, 33 against. The amendment is lost. I now call for a vote on the substantive motion as amended.
Councillors, once again, could you say loudly and clearly whether you're voting for or against or not voting on the substantive vote as amended, substantive motion as amended. Councillor Akagina. Councillor Akagina. Councillor Alan Brittis.
For.
Councillor Allison. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Attawar.
4.
Councillor Bailey.
4.
Councillor Barlow.
4.
Councillor Bembo.
4.
Councillor Bakari.
4.
Councillor Braund.
4.
Councillor Brunt. Councillor Bush.
4.
Councillor Omar Bush.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Byers.
4.
Councillor Christie.
4.
Councillor Chung.
4.
Councillor Cooper Marmier.
4.
Councillor Cowper. Councillor Cowper.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
4.
Councillor Curtin.
4.
Councillor Dean.
4.
Councillor Dehaney.
4.
Councillor Draper.
4.
Councillor Fairclough.
4.
Councillor Fraser.
4.
Councillor Gould.
4.
Councillor Gretton.
4.
Councillor Henry.
4.
Councillor Holden.
4.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Andrew Howard.
4.
Councillor Irons.
4.
Councillor Kenny.
4.
Councillor Kirby.
4.
Councillor Kohler.
4.
Councillor Lanning.
4.
Councillor Latif.
4.
Councillor Macaulay.
4.
Councillor Makin. Councillor Makin. Councillor McCabe.
4.
Councillor McGrath.
4.
Councillor McLean.
4.
Councillor Moulton.
4.
Councillor Mundy.
4.
Councillor Ormerod.
4.
Councillor Pearce.
4.
Councillor Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Quilliam.
4.
Councillor Simpson.
4.
Councillor Skeet.
4.
Councillor Southgate.
4.
Councillor Stanford.
4.
Councillor Stringer.
4.
Councillor Ward.
4.
Councillor Welton.
4.
Councillor Wilkinson.
4.
Councillor Williams.
4. 4.
Councillor Foley.
4.
The Mayor.
Not voting.
Councillor Akajini, I didn't catch you at the beginning. Are you there?
I said 4.
Thank you. I didn't hear you. Apologies.
Sorry.
Councillor Anderson.
Sorry, can you tell me why you can't hear me? I can't.
I can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yes. Are you voting for?
4, yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Makin.
4.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
So we're just waiting for the vote to be counted. Carried 59-4. We now move on to item 9, South London Waste Plan. Councillor Welton, will you move this report?
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I formally move the report. Waste treatment is a strategic planning issue across London and a challenge for all successful urban areas. As waste planning authorities, all London boroughs have a statutory duty to prepare a waste development plan. This document proposed 8 draft planning policies and identified 46 existing waste sites across 4 boroughs for safeguarding for waste treatment uses over the plan period to 2036. Specifically to Merton, the U plan proposes the removal of Benedict Wharf from waste management uses. In total, we had over 78 representations to the public consultation. The London plan sets the borough the target of managing 100% of London's waste within Greater London by 2026 and having 0 biodegradable and recycling waste going to landfill. It also sets target for local authority collected waste, commercial and industrial waste, construction, demolition and exhibition waste. As a development plan document at a strategic level, the South London Waste Plan considers the local authority collected waste and the other forms of waste collected by private contractors and accordingly safeguard sufficient sites to treat both the South London Waste Partnership waste needs and that of other commercial waste. At a more detailed level, the policies in the South London Waste Plan will be used to assess the merits of any planning applications submitted by the South London Waste Partnership Committee. As I mentioned, one of these sites is Benedict Wharf. Merton Council strongly supports the change of use from industrial, which is obviously its current waste use, to residential. This included detailed correspondence last year with the Mayor of London to change that landing designation, which would enable housing to be built. For many years, residents of Mitcham have had to put up with large vehicles transporting waste to the site, which has impacted on air quality, coupled with the smell that's emanated from the sites, which has resulted in many complaints. It is also at the end, Benedict School is also at the entrance to the waste site. We have been set challenging targets in the London plan to provide 918 homes per year, which is over double the number we are currently building. The release of this site will go a long way to helping us reach that target, but it is only a small part of that target, but it's also one of the largest sites available in the borough. I welcome that sewers are planning to relocate this site to Beddington Lane, and this waste plan will enable that to happen. In terms of the next stages, we will see the submission to the Secretary of State in the autumn, followed by the examination in public by the Planning Inspector next summer, with adoption late in 2021. I formally move the report, Madam Mayor.
This has been seconded by Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally second. Thank you.
I have the following listed to speak. Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite a straightforward report. We'll be supporting it and recommendation. One thing I would like to point out is the target is quite challenging to make sure we sort out 100% of all the waste, but I think it's something that can be met. And another interesting point was the amount of people who commented on the actual consultation. Quite a few on this occasion. And I note at 2.14 in the report that the Merton Conservative group commented, but there was nothing from the Liberal Democrats, who are normally quite keen on such consultations and responding to process. I was a bit disappointed to see they weren't listed here. But other than that, I think it's a sensible report overall.
Councillor Welton, would you like to use your right of reply?
No, I have no right of reply, Madam Mayor.
As I have no other speakers, unless I hear any dissent, I will take that as agreed. Agreed. Thank you, that is agreed. Item 10, review of proportionality and changes to members of committee. Councillor Quilliam, will you move this report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just 1 second. So I'd like to move the report and say that obviously the changing of the proportions on our committees is a formality. and it's based on the number of seats held by each party. So my leaving the Lib Dems and joining Labour has set in motion this process, which is as close to automatic as we have, and we're back to essentially where we were before the last by-election. So obviously I do appreciate why the Tories and my former colleagues on the Lib Dem benches might want to try and change that, but unfortunately we won't be accepting the proposed amendments today. It is at least a far cry from the Tories' opportunistic calls for an immediate by-election. Yes, I did eventually get around to reading some of your tweets in the thick of this global pandemic, thus showing their usual lack of judgment and a lack of concern for the safety of our residents that is worthy of our current Prime Minister. But what it does afford is the opportunity to set out why I made this move. The national reasons are obvious, I think. The Lib Dems in disarray, stopping, starting and swerving, like the exploding clown car that they are, as the country, as we've heard tonight, and as we all know from attending this meeting in the way that we are, is gripped by crisis. While Labour have reflected and elected a new, strong and credible leader of the opposition, taking the fight to the Tories and exposing their increasingly tragic incompetence. It wasn't a decision I came to quickly, but I think it's the right decision. Local government's been eviscerated over the last 10 years. And in Merton, it's Labour who are the ones that are grappling with the hard-nosed choices, the hard work of running the council and the hard graft of responding to this crisis. So I just couldn't continue as part of an opposition, doing things like voting for the Tories' farcical amendment this evening and arguing over 1 or 2 seats on a committee. The council and everyone who works here are doing an amazing job in the face of unprecedented circumstances. All of the cabinet, Councillor Stringer, Councillor Allison, Councillor Attawar, Councillor Cooper Mabaya, Councillor Macaulay, Councillor Welton, as we've seen tonight, are doing so many things, not just to protect residents in this difficult time, but to get us out the other end as well. And of course, Councillor Byers, whose work in not only making sure our care homes and care services are running safely, but fighting to keep vital services at St Helier and all the other work that Councillor Alan Brightis talked about at the beginning of the meeting, showed me the values that it takes to be a Labour councillor in Merton. So, Councillor Alan Brightis, thank you for bringing me into your team. I'll continue to be a loud and proud Labour councillor, and in 2022, I'll be campaigning to keep the Tories out here in Merton and make sure we have another 4 years of a Labour council that will do everything possible to protect the services people need and continue to make it a great place for families. Thank you.
This has been formally seconded by Councillor Allison.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll second and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
We have 2 amendments and we will take them in the order in which they were submitted. Firstly, the Liberal Democrat amendment. Councillor Kohler, would you like to move the first amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At a time when the Council is preoccupied with matters of life and death and impending recession, it is disappointing officers' time has had to be wasted on this review of proportionality in the wake of Councillor Quilliam joining Labour. And I'm sorry he left us. I know he was disappointed to lose the group leadership, the PPC, and finally the deputy leadership, but we're still sorry to see him go. We've checked with the Council's monitoring officer, Louise Round, who's confirmed that it would be perfectly legal to leave the committee proportions exactly as they are. Furthermore, not only it is legally unnecessary to reduce our representation on committees, there's also no moral justification for so doing. The electorate have not spoken, in a local election at least, whilst in both the European elections and the general election, the Lib Dem vote soared. Absent any legal or moral justification for reducing our membership, it's very obvious the Lib Dems are being removed from the Children and Young Persons Scrutiny panel solely for party political reasons. I thought we were trying to rise above such partisan point scoring and wonder what Labour—
1 minute remaining.
—of Councillor Alan Breeter's brazen attempt to weaken scrutiny. That's not to suggest the Conservative group leader, Councillor McLean, is beyond criticism. Admittedly, the Tories have now come forward with an amendment of their own, but when these changes were first suggested, Councillor McLean supported them, joining forces with Councillor Alan Breeter's in yet another example of Merton's cosy duopoly. I'm pleased he's changed his mind. and we will support his amendment if ours fails. Thank you.
And this is formally being seconded by Councillor McGrath.
Formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
Now we move to the Conservative amendment. Councillor Williams, would you like to move the amendment?
Madam Mayor, Councillor Carl Quilliam, the 2017 Lib Dem parliamentary candidate in Wimbledon, recently gave himself a fresh start in Merton by joining the Labour Party, thus proving again, if you vote Lib Dem, you get Labour. So we have tonight to address the committee places and proportionality, which we might normally do at an annual council meeting, which, unlike a good many other authorities in London, Merton have failed to arrange. Instead, we have this well-chaired but pathetic self-congratulatory meeting looking at issues addressed at the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. But that suits the Labour administration to avoid scrutiny of mucky Merton and all their bogus excuses for turning Wimbledon residents into a cash cow, whilst Mitcham-based councillors build ever skywards in somebody else's backyard. No scrutiny panels have been held, and to their shame, the Merton Park independent residents have shown how easily they acquiesce to the wishes of Big Brother, even though their votes are not needed. A funny kind of independence. So with the Labour group back at 34 members, they are legally entitled to the majority by proportionality rules, but we have the opportunity to rebalance the equity of places that minority groups have lost due to mathematical rounding. Labour have the numbers to increase now by just 2 places overall, which would allow both the Lib Dems to retain and Conservatives gain a seat on scrutiny and the PAC. If they're not afraid of transparency, they will support this amendment, which I move and urge the Council to accept.
And this is being formally seconded by Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I formally second this amendment.
Councillor Allison, did you wish to use your right to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I hadn't really wanted to, but I just felt a bit sad that some of the councillors from the opposition have spoken the way that they had. First of all, just a simple point of fact. Councillor Kohler describes what's taking place as a waste of time, but actually it really doesn't take a great deal of time. All that's happening is that we're respecting the decision of the council original makeup back in 2018 after the general election, since the council composition is exactly the same as it was in 2018, and in 2018 council agreed that the composition should be as it was then. Now that it is the same composition as it was in 2018, it should just revert to what it was in 2020. That was clearly the wish of council, and we should continue with it. He's a Liberal Democrat, and that's how democracy unfortunately works for all its problems. Also, I am so sad on this day where we've been talking about the issues that we have been, that Councillor Williams has been throwing around words like pathetic and bogus and cash cow and shame. We're in a terrible, terrible situation at the moment in the country and across the world. And language like that and the politicisation of things that are fairly routine like this is really unbecoming of him. And I would ask him to moderate his tone, recognise that our community is suffering, really suffering, and that really now is the time for us all to come together and recognise what we have in common, and act in a way that good Democrats would. So I hadn't wanted to say anything, but I just felt that I ought to, as a result of those speeches. Obviously, I second the motion, and I wish everybody a good night, because you're really good colleagues and you do great work in your community. I'm sorry that there have been a couple of exceptions tonight. Thank you for your time.
If there are no further speakers, Councillor Quilliam, do you wish to use your right of reply?
No, I'd like to thank Councillor Allison for what he said. I think he's summed up very nicely. So thank you, everybody.
I will now call for a vote on the first amendment, the Liberal Democrat amendment.
So councillors, again, when I call your name, will you indicate clearly whether you're voting for, against or not voting? Councillor Akagina.
Against.
Councillor Alan Brittas.
Against.
Councillor Allison.
Against.
Councillor Anderson. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Ottawa.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Barlow.
Not voting.
Councillor Bembo.
No voting.
Thank you. Councillor Bakari.
For.
Councillor Braund.
Against.
Councillor Brunt.
Against.
Councillor Adam Bush.
Not voting.
Councillor Omar Bush.
Not voting. Councillor Anderson, did you hear me?
I've got you now, Councillor Anderson. Which way are you voting?
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Byers.
Against.
Councillor Christie.
Against.
Councillor Chung. I believe Councillor Chung is having difficulties contacting us. You may vote on the chat. We'll come back to that. Councillor Cooper Marbella.
Against.
Councillor Cowper. Councillor Cowper. Councillor Crowe.
Not voting.
Councillor Curtin.
Against.
Councillor Dean.
Not voting.
Councillor Dehaney.
Against.
Councillor Draper.
Against.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Fraser.
Against.
Councillor Gould.
Councillor Cowper here.
For. Hello, Councillor Cowper.
I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry.
I'm voting against.
Thank you. Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Breton.
Not voting.
Councillor Henry.
Against.
Councillor Holden.
Not voting.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Howard.
Not voting.
Councillor Irons.
Against.
Councillor Kenny.
Against.
Councillor Kirby.
Against.
Councillor Kohler.
For.
Councillor Lanning.
Against.
Councillor Latif.
Not voting.
Councillor Macaulay.
Against.
Councillor Makin.
Against.
Councillor McCabe.
Against.
Councillor McGrath.
For.
Councillor McLean.
Not voting.
Councillor Moulton.
Not voting.
Councillor Mundy.
Against.
Councillor Ormrod.
Not voting.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Pritchard.
Sorry, against.
Councillor Quilliam.
Against.
Councillor Simpson.
Not voting.
Councillor Skeet. Councillor Skeet. Councillor Southgate.
Sorry, against.
Oh, against, thank you. Councillor Southgate.
Against.
Councillor Stanford.
Against.
Councillor Stringer.
Against.
Councillor Ward.
Against.
Councillor Welton.
Against.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Against.
Councillor Williams.
Not voting.
Councillor Foley.
Against.
The Mayor, Councillor Howard.
Not voting.
Thank you.
And we'll just pause while we wait for the result. I have 6 for, 35 against, and 16 not voting. The amendment is lost. I will now call for a vote on the second amendment, the Conservative amendment.
Okay, councillors, again, indicate your vote loud and clear, please. Councillor Akagina.
Against.
Councillor Alan Brittas.
Against.
Councillor Allison.
Against.
Councillor Anderson.
Against.
Councillor Attawar.
Against.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Barlow.
For.
Councillor Benbow.
For.
Councillor Bakari.
For.
Councillor Braund.
Against.
Councillor Brunt.
Against.
Councillor Adam Bush.
For.
Councillor Omar Bush.
For.
Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Byers.
Against.
Councillor Christie.
Against.
Councillor Chung.
Against.
Councillor Cooper Marbia.
Against.
Councillor Cowper.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe.
For.
Councillor Curtin.
Against.
Councillor Dean.
For.
Councillor Dehaney.
Against.
Councillor Draper.
Against.
Councillor Fairclough.
For.
Councillor Fraser.
Against.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Gretton.
For.
Councillor Henry.
Against.
Councillor Holden.
For.
Councillor Holmes. Councillor Andrew Howard.
For.
Councillor Irons.
Against.
Councillor Kenny.
Against.
Councillor Kirby.
Against.
Councillor Kohler.
For.
Councillor Lanning.
Against.
Councillor Latif.
For.
Councillor Macaulay.
Against.
Councillor Makin. Councillor Makin.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Against.
Councillor McGrath.
For.
Councillor McLean.
For.
Councillor Moulton.
For.
Councillor Mundy.
Against.
Councillor Ormrod.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Pritchard.
Against.
Councillor Quilliam.
Against.
Councillor Simpson.
For.
Councillor Skeet.
Against.
Councillor Southgate.
Against.
Councillor Stamford.
Against.
Councillor Stringer.
Against.
Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward. I'll come back. Councillor Welton.
Against.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Against.
Councillor Williams.
For.
Councillor Foley.
Against.
The Mayor.
Not voting.
Thank you. Councillor Ward, I didn't catch your vote.
Against.
Thank you.
And we will just wait for the result.
That's 21, 39, 38.
So 21 for, 38 against. The amendment is lost. Can the substantive motion be agreed? Or would members like a roll call?
Not agreed.
Nick said agreed.
So the substantive motion is agreed. With no further business, I would like to thank each and every one of you for attending this meeting and for the meeting running smoothly. And I would like to declare this meeting of council closed. Thank you.